there, I'm Jessica Alexander, one of the teachers at the University of Washington Botanical Gardens here at the Arboretum. I use she, her pronouns, as in she grows berries in her garden. Today I'm going to be talking with you about some of the wonderful books from the Elisabeth C. Library about floating and sinking and the amazing ways in which water in its endless journeying connects all life. We'll be doing this at one of the prettiest watery places in the Arboretum. That's the Woodland Pond here off of Azalea Way. Here we are at the Arboretum's Woodland Pond, and it is a beautiful fall day. Isn't this just great? Now, before we go further, I imagine that some of you are curious about the great big dinosaur food leafy plant behind me. Not everyone in the world calls it the dinosaur food plant. Its Latin name is Gunnera, or possibly Gunnera. And of course there are other names for it in other languages as well. In Spanish it would be Rhubarbo gigante. And we also have some of the tiniest plants that flower here in the Arboretum as well. There are so many of these tiny plants growing together that they practically cover the entire surface of the pond. Duckweed is their common name. Can you guess why? In Latin, the name is lemna. In Spanish, it would be lenteja de agua. And let me scoop some up so you can get a closer look. Now, when I swirl this, you can see how the leaves move in different directions, so they are actually separate plants. And if you look very closely, you might even be able to see the little roots that grow underneath the leaves down into the water. So lemna is little and Gunnera is gigantic. Both of these fantastic plants, gigantic and little, need water to thrive. We all do. And I kept noticing with the books that Librarian Laura shared this month how important water is in caring for one another, both body and spirit, which of course includes growing, harvesting, and preparing food. For instance, in Before We Eat, From Farm to Table, the workers who are helping to grow the plants need clean, fresh water just as much as the plants that they tend. Clean water is also important for the fish that some of us eat, and whales as well, and it makes boats float. Some people work on boats, and some people go on boats just for the joy and adventure of it. Water is also important for cooking and for washing your hands before you eat. I'm sure this person who is rolling out the dough washed their hands before they started touching food. And you can take a moment to think about how water is important for food that you've enjoyed. In Thank You, Mayuki, Mayuki uses water to make her grandfather a cup of tea, which is a very kind and caring act. They also both enjoy looking at water, both in its liquid form with fish swimming in it, and also when it is in a water vapor form as clouds and as it falls in the form of rain. Looking at water in its many changing forms can help lots of people feel more peaceful. People use water in a remarkable way for harvest in time for cranberries. Cranberries that will be made into juice or sauce or dried fruit rather than eaten fresh. The farmers wet harvest those, and that's done by flooding the sandy wetland soil in which they grow with about 8 to 10 inches of water. A tool is drawn through the vines to separate the berries from the plant, and then the berries bob to the top. Isn't it clever? You can observe what floats and sinks, and perhaps think of another way to use water in ways that are helpful. By looking at this pond here, you can see that at least some leaves float. These beautiful red ones are Japanese maple leaves. They're in the Acer family. Let's take a closer look at how this works with berries. These are hawthorn berries from my garden, similar to cranberries because they are red, though not nearly so tasty for humans. Here they are on the bottom of the jar, and it's actually kind of difficult for me to reach my hand in there and get them. But look what happens when I pour in the water. They bob a little bit, and then at least most of them float. And I can then pretty easily skim them off with a spoon. Whether something sinks or floats is called buoyancy. If something floats, it's buoyant. So, what do you think about this stick? Let's set it in the water and see. It is buoyant. It floats. Now, how about this rock? I'm going to give it a gentle underhanded toss, and I'm also going to check before I toss it to make sure that I'm not going to hit a heron or a duck or a turtle or any other animals. It goes. It does not float. Now let's take a look at this acorn. It's a little bit like a stick, grew on a tree, but it's also a little bit like a rock. Let's see what it does. Ooh. Not buoyant. It sinks. Now take a look at this oak leaf. It floats. It is buoyant, and it's actually reminding me a little bit of a boat. Let's see if it's possible to delicately set some other leaves and maybe even some pebbles so that they can float like passengers on a boat. Look at that floating rock. And this is something that you can do at home, in a bathtub or a puddle. So we want you to remember, with whatever you put into the water, that it's important to care for it, since it matters so much to all of life. Thank you for joining me here today. I'll hope to see you around the Arboretum. Goodbye and take care.